What's up, everybody? Manny here with another Manny Draws episode. Today we're talking with Tyrell Cannon, and as you can see, I'm scrolling through his site right now looking at his juicy art. If you don't know Tyrell, you will know him, okay? Cool guy making cool stuff. I did a little drawing for his book and decided that, hey, why don't we talk about Eris a little bit? Why don't we talk about his passion project? So I figured I'd ask him a few questions. He'd answer them. We'd have a chill time, cool time, and maybe you find a new artist. Maybe you dig his stuff like I do. Really cool guy, really nice guy. He's definitely helped me out a lot over the past few years, just asking him questions. And that's one thing that I highly recommend that you do if you're starting your art journey, is just ask. Just go out there and ask people, and you'll be surprised at what you get, the answers that you'll receive. He's definitely one of the good ones, and I hope y'all enjoy the interview here. We're gonna dive in here soon, and yeah, get started. So, hope y'all enjoy. All right, so welcome, Internet. We're here with Tyrell Cannon, who has brought us Beef Bros, The Schlub, multiple badass mini comics. I will say I think I have all of them. And now we're here talking about the new Eris book. Is it Eris? Right?
Well, I usually say Eris. I think that the traditional pronunciation of that word is Eris. So I'll accept Eris or Eris.
Okay.
It's kind of my it's my Mark Borchardt moment. I'm like, well, Coven sounds like oven, so it's Coven.
There it is. Okay, just wanted to make sure it was totally butchering the name. But it is a sci-fi, from my understanding, a sci-fi passion project that you're doing with your brother, correct?
That's right. Yeah. Me and my younger brother Logan have been working on this one for quite some time. So he helps me with the writing, and then I do the writing and all the art and everything.
Awesome.
So it's been almost a little over 5 years now we've been working on it. But the project has its origins even way before that, but really working on it between projects for the last 5 years or so. And it's science fiction, action, lots of fights, big action, crazy stuff.
Yes, it's awesome. Those action sequences, is it issue 2 where they're fighting the root farmers, and then he's just like, you have that one panel or that one tier of panels where it's just like reaction.
A zipper.
Yeah, it looks like a zipper. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
It's so cool. It's like, dude, I gotta use that idea, man. That's so good.
Take it, man. Take it.
Gosh, that's great. So it's been going on for a while, and we can get this on Kickstarter. It is live when this recording comes out. Should be this week. I'm gonna try and get it out this week.
It's live right now, and if you go check it out on Kickstarter, it's up until it's for a month, 30 days. So we're up through May 7th, and it'll be we got some good stretch goals too we can talk about. But yeah, right now is the time to get in. I think there's still a few early bird spots left, and there's also some commission slots left still.
Ooh,
so
commission slots, yeah. Are you just like, when you're doing the commission stuff for Kickstarters, do you strictly just do anything? Is it open to anything, or is it
in the past I've let people do pretty much whatever they wanted. I think on one of the campaigns I said it had to be something from the book, but generally I'll do whatever. I'm charging my normal commission price and then the price of the book, and I figure, hey, get whatever you want. And sometimes people want stuff from the book and sometimes they don't.
Awesome. Yeah, I was wondering about the limit. I was like, would it be good to do the limit, or kind of like thinking future Manny, you know what I mean?
Well, I limit it mostly because it's a lot of work to do the commissions, and like after the campaign you're busy fulfilling orders and stuff. And if I do more than 5 or 10, it just becomes it's just too much. I won't get them done in time to ship it with the book. So
have you ever done, I have a few friends that have done basically put yourself in the comic and I feel like that is just a way too much work.
I did a book called Astrobiology a while back with Seth Jacob, and that was one of the reward levels, and I will never ever do it again. It was fun, and I didn't mind doing it, and the people I think that got that level were happy with it. I hope they were.
Yeah.
But I hate doing likenesses anyway, and it's also just like then you're trying to figure out where does it fit within the context of the story, and usually when I do a campaign for a book, it's usually pretty much all done before I start. Now, if I'm working with someone else, it's not always done before I start. But if it's my own project, there's not really any room for me to put anybody in there because I've already finished it.
Yeah. I know, like, listening to Jake Parker interviews and stuff, he's definitely commented on, like, getting the book at least 90% done before it on Kickstarter. And I definitely
absolutely
highly agree with that. So, because I know there's been a lot of horror stories with someone doing the Kickstarter, not having it done or whatever kind of deal. And I'm like, that's too much anxiety for me. I don't know if I'd want to do that.
It's a lot, man. It's a lot.
Oh gosh. But so you guys have talked about, or you just mentioned that you guys have been thinking about this project for a while. So how long are we talking? Like since you guys were kids or what?
Well, not that long.
Okay.
But originally I started this project. I started thinking about it back in like 2008, maybe.
Okay.
And I was working with a buddy of mine named John. And we were just kind of kicking the idea around. And I thought maybe he could draw it. I don't know. We sort of, we just kind of kicked it around for a while. But it never really, neither one of us really had the time and energy to make it happen. And so, years later, when I left my day job to do comics full time, I knew I was going to I always wanted to have something on my own going all the time, because between jobs, you got to keep busy. And if you can do some of your own stuff, that can also be, not just fun, but another source of income. And so I started working on Eris around that time. It was like 2019 or so.
Okay.
And I kind of realized early on that, a lot of my past projects I'd done all by myself. Like any of my personal projects were all written and drawn by me. And I had done a couple of minis with my brother, and he's an actor and he writes and stuff. And I just had a lot of fun working with him. And so I thought, well, why not bring him on board? I already had sort of the basic concept in place. I knew what I wanted the book to be, what it was called, all those kind of things. And asked if he could help me sort of write the actual scripts and dialogue and stuff. And obviously that turned into a lot. He had a lot of input then into the story after that, but initially it was just like, can you come help me out? And so we started collaborating that way with it, and it's been really fun. And like I said, it's a passion project I've done between gigs, and same for him. He does acting gigs and stuff, and so it's kind of, whenever we have time, we chip away at it, and we finally got through it. But yeah, we probably started in earnest around 2019, the two of us working on it.
Cool. That's awesome. I wanted to get into that process too. So you guys are both coming up with the script together? Like, do you have visuals that you're like, this would be cool, and he's like, yeah, what's
yeah, it's our rule kind of when we're working together is that whoever's sort of the project was the genesis with, kind of has final say, and that helps whenever there are other ideas, and then there's no sort of like fighting about it. It's just like we both consider each other's ideas. If somebody has to make a decision about this way or that way, it's whoever, so this one was started with me, so I had kind of that. And really though, it's pretty open-ended. What usually happens is I had some story ideas already and some themes I wanted to explore and some visuals that I was really excited about. And so I would start with those things. We'd get a document together, and I would say, well, this issue, I want to have, these 4 or 5 things happen, and I want to have like a couple of these key moments. And then, can you help me sort of turn that into something that feels more like a story? Because my stuff tends to be pretty experimental. And so he'll help me kind of, think about that. And then the other thing he's really good about is giving the characters voices. I kind of know the characters in my head to some degree, but sometimes I struggle to give them a voice or dialogue.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times I'll say, there'll be a moment where it'll say, I'll give him the script that I started. It'll say, Rankin says something here that's like really badass and mean or whatever, what does he say? And then Logan will come up with some lines and we'll kind of workshop them from there. Or I'll say, on this page, I need this character to understand that this character feels this way or whatever. And then he'll kind of go in and sort of break it up a little bit. And there's a lot of back and forth, a lot of talking on the phone. And then on my past project, I didn't always write a script. I would just kind of roll straight into thumbnails. But on this one, we try to have a pretty, not super tight script, but at least there's page breakdowns and dialogue breakdowns on it. And then from there, I start to put together kind of the visuals. And then after I kind of get the visuals together, a lot of times we go back and adjust the script because, I thought this panel would be bigger, or this panel, tells the story without the words, or this panel needs more words to explain what's going on. And so then we go back into the script again. And then after that is when I start the actual art, so that all the sort of fine tuning of dialogue and stuff is mostly done. Because when I do work on Eris, I generally draw the word balloons on the page. And so I kind of want to know kind of what the dialogue is 90% what it's going to be.
Cool. Awesome. I know there's one book that I did that was more just art for art's sake kind of thing, and then I'd go back in and kind of figure things out. So I totally relate to what you're saying. Especially
it's a fun way to work. It's just it's not like assembly line style, so it's not as fast, but I think the results, if you have a lot of that back and forth, is really good. You can really kind of tweak it and make it really work.
For sure. I know there's one book Kevin and I are working on right now where it's kind of similar in that aspect, where it's like these key moments and, Captain says something really cool.
Right. Yeah. What's this guy say? Yeah.
Something sweet. But that's cool, man. So when you're doing the process and you're talking about, you have the script, you do your thumbnails and everything, do you have like a routine? Do you have a scheduled week? Like Mondays you do thumbnails, Thursdays you do inking, kind of thing? Is there?
Yeah, that would be great. And if when I've worked on other books, that's definitely been the case. So when I did Beef Bros and the Schlub, and we sort of had rough deadlines to meet, and so I had an idea of how many pages I had to get done, and that sort of drives your process a little more. So for me, at least, when I have that kind of situation, my process is going to be built around, well, how much do I need to get done, and how much time do I have to do it? And so with those, I definitely did have, like with the Schlub, I would generally thumbnail either 10 pages at a time, or maybe do the whole 20-page issue, like thumbnail the whole thing before I ever started working on paper. So it's usually 10 to 20 pages at a time, and then I would show it to the guys, get feedback, and then start on the artwork, and then they do the script after I finish the art. And on Beef Bros, it was very similar. It was a matter of like, thumbnail. I think on those two, I thumbnailed the whole thing before I started, I'm pretty sure, or at least a good chunk of it. And those are 32 pages, 64 pages. Eris, the nature of how it was done, just, I don't have that kind of schedule, just because sometimes I did and sometimes I didn't. And sometimes, I would have time to draw a page or color a page, but I wouldn't have time to do the next set of thumbnails. So I was always sort of working however. So, every step of Eris has been done between other projects. So the only thing that was done pretty early on was most of the first issue. And then, I would do another project like astrobiology, then I would thumbnail the second issue. And then I would have another project, and then I would start drawing the second issue. And then I have another project, then I would start coloring the second issue. And then, and the third chapter in particular was done over, I did two pretty big books in the midst of it. So I started it, and then I did the Schlub, and then I did some more of it. And then I did a book that hasn't come out or been announced yet that was another 80 or 90 pages. And then came back and did more Eris. And then a short gig, and then I was coloring a lot for the last 3 months. I've been coloring the third issue. So yeah, it's kind of not, it's different. Whereas, like I said, if I have an allotted amount of time for a project, I definitely try to break it down into tasks. And usually thumbnailing is what I do first, just because it really helps me to kind of understand that the whole thing works. Whereas if I do a page at a time, sometimes I feel like I'll get to the page 10 and maybe there'd be something cool I could have referenced back there if I had planned it better. I'd probably build in too much complexity, but that's why I thumbnail first. And then with inks and stuff, I try to have maybe 5 pages get in the penciling phase, which I do pretty loose pencils, and then maybe 5 pages in the inking phase, so that on any given day during my work week, I can bounce between the two.
Yeah.
You know, if I don't feel like inking, I can pencil. If I don't feel like penciling, I can ink. And I kind of bounce back and forth every day with those.
Yeah, I honestly feel like that's the strategy to go if you're doing everything in the book. It's like, no, I don't feel like doing that. Let me just letter this page, or I don't feel like doing that. Let me just flat this thing or whatever. So,
yeah, because at some point you get, you know how it is. I mean, I get bored with any one of those tasks all the time. I mean, drawing is the one I can do most of the time and be okay. But like towards the end of Eris, one of the big things that had to be done was all the lettering. And that's just, I just bite the bullet and spend like, 4 days trying to get the lettering figured out. And, it is what it is.
Yeah. I mean, we can't all be like Sean Phillips, dude. I get it. That dude's wacky. But, is the process super different? I mean, compared to all the other books that you've done, like, is this one super different comparatively to all those?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest difference is that it's mine, and so I tend to be a little more, for better or worse, I spend a little more time kind of tweaking every little thing.
Yeah.
There was a point in this 3rd chapter that I was going back and just like drawing faces over and over and over again, probably too many times, but like just things that you're like, well, this is mine. And there's some spreads in there too that I was like, if this takes me 2 weeks, it takes me 2 weeks because this is how I want it to look. Whereas if I'm doing a big book or a book that has a deadline, I will be a little more strategic. I'll say, yes, I want to do a splash page, but let's be realistic about what I can get done with this time. Whereas Eris is me being not realistic about anything, just like, as many characters as I can put on a page, the more splashes, color everywhere, just everything, and so that's the biggest difference, is more the approach than it is the, day-to-day schedule.
Right. And I mean, also jumping in between and stuff, that's definitely not the usual process with everything else.
Right.
So.
Right. Usually they want everything in steps, specific, if you're working with a publisher or with another, writer, they want to see like, okay, thumbnails, now pencils, now inks, and,
Totally get it. So with publishing, there's always hurdles, especially being an indie guy. What sort of hurdles have you come across during the creation of Eris? And how have you overcome them? Like anything in specific that you have in mind compared to other books?
The biggest challenge is just finding the time to get it done. And you really want to get it done. Right. But until I have it done and printed, it's not making me any money. Right. Yeah. So you have to sometimes compromise that. And I think that's the biggest challenge. The other challenge is that as you work on a project, it changes. And so you try to, and you change as an artist too. And so part of it is learning to embrace the journey of what the piece evolves into as you work on it. Right. Yeah. We definitely had an idea of where we were going with it from the very beginning, but I make it a point on most of my projects to not know the exact last 10 pages or whatever, because I feel like as you work on it, you start to, have different feelings about it, and you start to look at it from different perspectives, and then also leaves room for your collaborators to help influence it. And so, that's another challenge, but also like that's a fun challenge, is sort of just trying to accept, how it goes. And the other challenges are with just self-publishing is finding printers that are good and reliable and affordable, and doing all the shipping and all your own book design. And it's nice to just sit around and draw all day, but if you want to self-publish and have stuff that's truly your own, you do have to do these other tasks. And I think a lot of artists struggle to do that. I know it is difficult, but I've had a lot of practice at it at this point, and I feel like once you just kind of accept that it's part of it, and then you learn to love those parts of it, like that I can make it look however I want, right? No one's going to tell me I can't use this weird logo. No one's going to tell me I can't just have this page be blank or whatever, right? Like it's very liberating, and it's one of the few comics is one of the few mediums where you can truly be an auteur, because you can do the whole thing yourself pretty much, or with a small group of collaborators. but yeah, printing and shipping and all that is always kind of a pain, but you get through it, and Lord knows it's probably going to be a little weird in the foreseeable future. So we'll see what happens.
Yep. Jeez. But how, like, speaking of finding a printer, how do you go about finding the right printer for your book when you're doing it?
I've done a lot of different projects with a lot of different printers, and it's, I think one of the things I found was that I can't become attached to any printers because they change and my needs change, right? And so I've had great experiences with a lot of printers that I don't work with anymore because either they're not around or what they do doesn't fit what I'm doing. I've also had experiences where I really did depend on a printer and then things didn't work out and I didn't have a backup plan in mind. And so I try to work with printers that are friendly and have good customer service above all else, because I'll pay a little bit more if I know that when I have a problem with the printing, I'm actually going to get to talk to somebody who understands the printing instead of just talking to some customer service rep who has no idea how a press functions or why something might be incorrect, because I care about those things.
Yeah.
And so I think that initially back when I was printing, my first comics, I was just printing them at Kinko's myself. And then I was printing them on the offset press at school myself. And then when I started doing print on demand stuff, I tried just about every kind of service you can think of. Mm-hmm. And some of them have stuck around and been really good to me, and other ones have gone to the wayside. It was a lot of research. And the other part of it that was helpful was talking to other artists that were also printing their own stuff and asking them who they use and what they think is a good printer, or, what kind of printing options they do. I remember at one point I was working on one of my older comics, and I really loved the paper that one of my friends had printed their book on. And so I was like, well, which printer did you use? And what was this paper stock called, And it was really fun to kind of get those details out of people who have had a real experience with it. Because it's not a bad idea to go read Google reviews or Trustpilot reviews for a printer. But if you know somebody that's worked with them, that's very helpful. And so right now we're working with Print Ninja, who I've worked with.
Oh, cool.
4 or 5 times, and I know the people over there. I've known them for a long time, and it's close to Chicago, so if there's ever a problem, I can run up there. I mean, they do outsource printing, but the actual offices and customer service is all local.
Cool.
And so that's what we're working with right now, but I've worked with a bunch of other ones.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you have to. You got to see what's out there.
Yeah, it's good to try different places, and that's why mini comics are a good way to do that. I use them as sort of an experiment sometimes, like what can these printers do? Let's try it out, try something different and see what happens.
Do you do like just local print shop kind of things, or like are you experimenting with just the big?
I've done that before too.
Okay.
Yeah, I've done that before too. I've printed with some local just places around the city, and I've done poster prints through some of them, and yeah, I mean, every now and again you get like a little sweet spot with somebody, and they've got a great price for you, and the quality's good. But then sometimes that person leaves, or the shop goes under, or so I've had that happen a few times too. And luckily in Chicago there is a lot of those kind of options, and I have used some of our risograph printers here, and over at Sputnik Press, like Perfectly Acceptable Press, and those guys. And I think that if you have stuff like that in the city too, take it to your advantage. Try those local printers. You're always going to get a better price printing. Well, I mean, I don't want to get into politics, but like you're probably going to get a better price in the past printing somewhere else. But it is good to know some local options, and I try to support local businesses as much as I can. I mean, I'm getting something printed locally for C2E2 this weekend, so
sweet.
Awesome. Diversify your supply chains.
Yeah, I've been thinking about doing that for HeroesCon when that's coming up. Is just experiment with this new mini comic that I'm doing. So, I mean, and if you ever want some recommendations, I'm happy to give them. I'd love to hear some of the. I know we've talked about printers before, so we should definitely keep that dialogue open. For sure, dude. Always open. I know I talked with Andrew McLean a little bit online. It was just like, hey, who'd you use?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. He always has great looking stuff. He'd be a good resource.
It looks so good. And like what like matte, or what's it called? Not gloss. Do you use gloss on your interiors, or?
I really try not to. I hate gloss coating.
Yeah.
On anything.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's unavoidable. Most places now will offer a matte finish, which I think is still helps the color.
Yeah.
You know, again, it depends if you're doing offset or digital or whatever you're doing. But a matte coating is never a bad idea.
Yeah.
Sometimes an uncoated paper will look good depending on the project. And then I like to put some of the soft touch on the cover or something like that. Something that gives, I like the book object to feel substantial and, you know, solid.
Yeah. Yep. Totally get it. I love the matte look. I don't think I'll ever stop. I do want to mess with, I would love to print on newsprint. I just love that look.
Oh, it's great.
And love the feel.
It's beautiful.
Dude, it looks so good. And was it the Enfield Massacre, this Jacob Phillips book?
Yeah.
That, my gosh, it's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, that book looks great. I would love to see, you know, especially some of the way your style, I think, would work good on some newsprint.
Oh, stop it. Thanks, man. You too, man. Let's do a newsprint comic. Let's go.
Yeah, man.
So when you're making Eris, okay, do you have an album on repeat? Are you listening to one artist, multiple artists, types of music? What's going on?
I definitely, I listen to a lot of music. I love music. I love music on when I'm working.
Yeah.
When you're working all day, every day on comics, sometimes though I vacillate between TV shows, podcasts, audiobooks, and music.
Whoa. Okay.
So I wouldn't say it's one thing, but I did do on Spotify. There's a Eris playlist. If you just find me on there, you can see it, and it's got a bunch of stuff that is either inspiring for the book or directly relates to sort of themes in the book. And so it's a mix of metal and dark synth, and I mean, you mentioned Carpenter Brute. I really like those guys.
Dude, Carpenter
yeah, so I definitely would say there's probably a lot of doom metal and sort of sci-fi speed metal kind of influences in the book, but also things like Bjork, you know, or a lot of hip hop stuff, like especially LP stuff that's really dystopian.
That's awesome.
And then action movie soundtracks and things like that I'll listen to sometimes, especially if I'm writing or thumbnailing. It's nice to put on something like the Alien soundtrack or the Predator soundtrack. Those are good.
Yes. I've been putting on I'm working on a little Western book, and I've been putting on the Red Dead Redemption 2.
Oh yeah. Perfect.
It's
perfect.
So good.
There's so many good Western soundtracks that, you know, I love listening to a good Western soundtrack.
Was it Erico Morricone, or the guy that did
the bad Ennio Morricone?
Yes. Yeah. Dude, can't get enough. So awesome.
But yeah, there's definitely, if people want to go check out the playlist, it's got like, I don't know, a couple hours of music on it, and it's a good mix of just random stuff that I find connected to the Eris book.
I think that's cool to see too, with a lot of books coming out. I know some people will put up their Spotify playlist attached to the book. Love seeing that stuff, and then you just find new music that way too. So
right.
Just hear that, everybody? Go click on that Spotify playlist. So with experimenting with formats on making books and everything, is there a particular thing that you would want to try out in the next project or future or whatever, with book format, or what you want to do?
Yeah,
painting or what?
There's too many things probably to even name. I mean, I want to try everything. But one of the next things I do want it to be it'll be a black and white book, and I want to print it on something similar to a newsprint, and at more of a manga size is sort of the direction I'd like to go with one of my future projects. Another thing that I'd like to do for another project is I kind of wanted to do this on Eris, but I ended up not doing it just because I knew it would end up costing a lot, is fold out spreads. So, you know, you have a 2-page spread that folds out into a 4-page or a 6-page spread. I think that would be a really fun thing to play with at some point.
Yeah, that would be insane. Does Print Ninja do that type of stuff? Do they do like?
Oh, I'm sure they could. I'm sure they could. If they can't, there are people that will. There's another person I just talked to at a show that does that. You know, there's a lot of really great printers out there. Assuming we continue to have access to them.
Yeah. Well, that's so cool. That'd be a cool idea. I would love to see that. But with Eris, what what's your format? Like, how big are you working on those pages? Because I've seen some of your originals at Heroes, and I've seen one of the double-page spreads that you talked about, and it looks awesome. That's in this book. So
Yeah, they're see if I can find. They're 11 by 17.
okay.
There's one. So 11 by 17.
Ooh, there it is.
Bristol board, ink, Pro White pens. So
Heck yeah, dude.
yeah, it's a lot of it's like your standard comic size.
Yeah.
And I print them pretty much standard comic size. The first 2 issues were printed at a slightly different size just because of the limitations of the printer I was working with.
Mm-hmm.
But basically comic size stuff.
Awesome.
Oh yeah.
Sweet. Are you gonna be? Do you see yourself going smaller or bigger?
Well, the other project I just worked on, I was working on manga paper, so this size, A4.
Awesome.
So this is much smaller than the Eris paper.
Yeah.
And so it was really fun. I enjoyed it, and I think I'll do more comics at this scale. There's an immediacy to it. I tend to go really detailed, and I still go detailed for the small stuff, but it sort of forces you. Like, I limited my tools on that so that I would have to, I couldn't just continue to draw really tiny stuff small and try to be a little bit more expressive with the lines. And it was a fun exercise. I recommend it for anybody. And the manga paper's like, well, again, who knows? But in the past, you can get this manga paper for like crazy cheap. I got like 40 pages for $12. It doesn't behave exactly the same as a Bristol board, but it still is great to draw on. Really fun.
I've been messing with some watercolor paper recently.
Yeah.
Like 12 by 18. I use like cans and watercolor paper. I just had fat stacks of it, so I was like, let me just go through this. But getting the dry brush effect on watercolor paper, whew, I love that stuff, man. I love texture.
I'm sure that's fun, man.
Yeah.
The texture is great. Like, you can play with different papers and that plays up those things, like the texture, and I'd love to see some of that stuff, man, when you want to show it.
Dude, you got it. I'll send you some pages after this.
All right.
Let's dive into you managing 1,500 different things every day. So you're doing your YouTube channel, you're doing your streams, you're doing your commissions, you're doing mini comics, you're working, like we talked about before, you're working on 2 different comics, 3 different comics at the same time. How do you do it, man? Like, is there a schedule or a deadline that you put on stuff, and you make time for family, which is important. So I want to go over that.
Well, that's a good question, and I definitely see it as like I'm glad you're asking, because I feel like I know a lot of comic book artists and a lot of artists, and time management is not always their strong suit. Yeah. When I had a day job, it was always a struggle to find time to do your work. And it was kind of a thing where most nights of the week I would work on my stuff when I got home, and weekends I would put in a lot of hours on stuff. Yeah. And so there's sort of a healthy way to do these things and an unhealthy way to do these things. And I've tried both. Because when we first had our daughter, she's 5 now. And when we first had her, it was really hard to find the time to work. And so it was a matter of just not sleeping enough and not, working in every little tiny little bit of time that you can get. So it's not a comfortable way to work. And it wasn't healthy either. I had a difficult time during that time period. And I think that one thing I've learned now that I've done this for a little longer is that the best way to get things done isn't always to just work all the time. It's more to really commit to whatever the thing is you're doing in that moment, and try to focus on that thing. And then you'll get it done quicker than trying to have 6 things in the air at the same time when you end up dropping 3 of them. And so I try to block my schedule, even if I don't know how long something's going to take. If I have something I want to do, I'll put a block on my schedule. And this is something I've done since I had a professional job, so that I know I've made myself time to do that thing or think about that thing. And then make adjustments constantly, right? So I didn't get this thing done. Okay, so what's the next time block I have to do that? And what's the deadline for it? And can you group these things together so that you have 3 days in a row of it, and then maybe you do your other things on another day? So it's kind of a matter of constantly shifting your schedule, because, especially if you do have a kid or a family and you do want to see them, which you should, their schedule is going to change, right?
Yeah.
My daughter has a dance class on Mondays. And so what I used to do on Mondays doesn't work because I got to kind of go pick her up and do that and take her there. And then, you know, maybe on a different night of the week, it used to be a free night of the week, but now it's the night that we have some other thing planned or whatever. And so you just kind of shift a lot.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I found helpful is to really try to take days off. And so I try to not work on Sundays at least, and try to also get some alone time. Because again, if your brain is, for me, if my brain is always constantly working and I'm trying to do everything all the time, I just end up kind of, nothing's really getting your full attention. And so it never turns out the way you want it to. And it's hard because there's always a pressure that you need to be doing more and you need to be trying harder and you need to be working more and harder. But you want to feel good, especially if I'm going to go to the drawing table. I want to feel good about being there and bring a good energy to it. Because if I don't, if I'm more worried about whatever, my daughter's trip or my wife and I's thing or whatever, I'm not going to really be drawing. So the other piece of that, I guess, the last piece of it is just I adjust the schedule and try to work in the other things. So if I'm having a day where I can't draw, I always have something else in the hopper. I've got to pack up these commissions, or I've got to update the website with this information. And so then when I have those days where I can't draw, I can work on those things. And then when I have the days I really need to draw, I have those other things can be done at a different time. And so it is kind of like every week I look at my schedule and try to figure out what I can get done. And then if it's a longer term project, like when I was working on the Schlub, I was thinking, okay, well, 5 weeks per issue, that means I got to do thumbs in a week and then, 5 pages a day for 3 weeks or whatever. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. That's how I did the Schlub pretty much. I mean, on the third issue, I got a little extra time, but I was turning those over in about 5 weeks.
Holy smokes. That's crazy.
Yeah.
How many pages was each issue?
20.
It was 20, and you did 20 pages every month, like.
Well, 5 weeks, so a little more than a month.
Yeah, okay, okay, all right.
And there would be some breaks in there because somebody would be late on the script very often. Probably Ryan Stegman, but I'm just teasing. But yeah, sometimes they wouldn't have the script ready, and so I might get a week off, and then I could work on Eris for a week, and then I would come back to it. But they were pretty good about that, so we cranked it out, and it wasn't. I mean, it's 6 issues. We didn't do 6 issues in 6 months. We probably did 6 issues in like 8 months.
Okay. Yeah.
With all the pauses and with the longer issue at the end.
Yeah. It looks great, man. I love the show.
Thank you.
It's a fun.
Thank
book.
you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, man. It's a good time. When you were working with Image, I do want to ask this: when you're working with Image, did you have to have that first issue completely done, or did you guys just pitch it? What was that about?
It's different for everybody.
Okay.
Image doesn't, from my experience, doesn't really care what you do as long as you give them the stuff when you say you're going to give it to them.
Okay.
But the thing with the Schlub was that Ryan had already pitched it with him drawing it a couple years before we started it, and they had already said sure.
Okay.
And then he got wrapped up in Venom stuff and just kind of didn't get to it. And so then he came back to them and said, well, can we still do it and have Tyrell draw it? And they said, sure. And so then he also brought on Kenny, and the story changed a little bit from there, but they said yes to us before we had any issues done. They didn't even, I think what they did was Ryan said he wanted me to draw it, and they sent him like Beef Bros and Eris to look at, and they said, sure, fine.
Cool.
So it was a little different in that regard. And like, they didn't give us any deadlines necessarily, other than once you're releasing the book, they want it monthly, right? But if you want to take 2 years before you get the first one done, maybe not 2 years, but if you want a bunch of time before you get the first one done, they didn't really push too hard on that. Okay.
Cool. That's fun. It sounds like they're pretty decent to work with then, if that's the case.
I mean, they're decent in the sense that, you keep all your rights, and nobody else gives you that deal.
Right.
And they're decent to work with in that they, once the book was coming out, they were very consistent communicating with us about sales and all that. And they also aren't giving you any more editorial than you ask for, right? Oh, cool. You send it to them. If they see something egregious, like you forgot the barcode or something, they'll tell you, but generally they're just like, give us the files, right? The other advantage on that book, though, that I don't have on, say, Eris, is that we had a letterer and designer who was taking care of getting the files prepped for us. So I don't know how picky they are about that stuff. I just know that our guy got it done and turned it into him.
Cool.
So
Worked out.
yeah.
When it comes to like you have so much freedom doing your own indie stuff, so and then you're putting that on Kickstarter. Was there any interest at all bringing it to a publisher, or were you guys just like, let's just do it ourselves kind of thing? Like let's do the DIY thing.
I considered it. I considered showing it. I had already showed Eris when we had the first issue done, or like I had a pitch package together. I had already showed it to Image and a couple other places, and they had passed. And so that's when I went to Kickstarter. And so when I was finishing it up, I was kind of like, well, I could show it to them again, but then I would probably be in a situation where if it was Image, obviously I would keep all the rights. If it was somewhere else, I'd probably have to make some kind of agreement, which I didn't want to make.
Oh, yeah.
And then the other thing is that then it would have to come out whenever they had room on their schedule for it. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to do it myself. It's my book. And there are tons of advantages to publishing if you can get in the door. And there's also a lot of things that aren't that helpful about it. I don't know that the audience is the same, if you're publishing through Kickstarter or yourself versus publishing through a mainstream publisher. There is some crossover. Obviously, you probably go to the comic book shop and you buy things on Kickstarter, but I think that's maybe not everybody who goes to the comic book shop does that, and not everybody who goes on Kickstarter does. And we'll see what happens. Maybe it'll work out, maybe it won't, but I just felt like we've brought it this far by ourselves. Why do I want to get someone else involved here, right? Now, if it does gangbusters and somebody comes to me with an offer, hey, I'll listen. But I was like, I'm not chasing anybody on this book. I'm not chasing a publisher. It's my book. I'll do it how I want, So, yeah.
Punk. That's metal.
There's other things that, I do have pitches out other places. Like there are books that I am like, I would love for this to be published. Yeah. And the difference is, I think, is with those, if they don't get picked up, I'm not going to do them. Whereas this one, I'm like, I'm doing it no matter what. So why even bother with everybody else? But again, I'm open to it. And who knows? Like I said, if it can have a life past the Kickstarter, I'm open to it.
I feel like personally, a lot of the cool stuff that comes out are just people that do their own thing. You have James O'Barr the Crow, who just was drawing. There's a bit more to that story too, but dude was just drawing. Right, and then you have the Minutemen, who were just making whatever they wanted and releasing it, and then Then you have the Ramones, and you get all this stuff like in the punk world that are now legends, just because they did their own thing, and even the Misfits literally did it themselves. You know what I mean? So and I think that just pairs well with comics too. Like it's so similar. So
I agree. I tend to gravitate towards work in any medium that is done kind of on its own terms and maybe outside of the constraints of like a money-making endeavor. And that doesn't mean they can't make money. All these people you mentioned make money. Yeah. It's just a matter of saying like, I'm not making this to fit into a market. I'm making it because this is a thing that I feel, some sort of passion about or some sort of responsibility towards.
Yeah. You're just connected to it on some sort of level, and you got to get it out. Just itching to get it out.
Yeah.
So when you were younger, I'm sure it was a bit different when you were creating stuff. How different is Tyrell now versus younger Tyrell back in the day creating comics?
Well, there's a lot that's the same and there's a lot that's different.
Yeah.
There's been shifts at different moments in my creative life. I think, there's your initial sort of act of creating as a child that comes from sort of this unadulterated place of expression. Uh-huh. And then there's getting educated and starting to think of things as right and wrong or correct and incorrect. And then there's sort of trying to apply that in the world of a job or making money or and then that shifts it. And I think that if anything, compared to say when I first was making comics, I was always passionate about it and I still am, but now how do I put it? I feel a lot more at peace and grateful for just the fact that I can't stop it or really, I'm lucky that I'm visited by inspiration and that I get to engage with this stuff. And so I try to enjoy it more than anything, because I think when I was younger, I'm still critical of my stuff, but I think when I was younger, that my criticalness of my own work sort of held me back from really engaging with it in a fuller way.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that that's a big difference now, as I try to approach it with a little more gratitude and a little less thinking about what's right or wrong, and more just like, okay, here's this muse, this idea that's visited me, and how can I, how am I supposed to channel that? And like, let's figure that out.
Yeah.
And then the other part of it that I try to balance, that has to balance that off for me, is like, since I am doing a lot of jobs that are for money, I still want them to connect with me in some way. And I also want to know that I can not tie all of my creative self-worth to these other jobs, right? And it doesn't mean I don't care about them, but you have to sort of find, for me, I had to find my creative center so that it doesn't get rocked by a book not selling or getting taken off of a project or whatever kind of calamity comes in your way as a creative person.
Yeah. Is it like more, I guess a more out there question would be like, is it more spiritual versus utilitarian kind of thing? You know what I mean? Like, is it, you're more connected to, you feel better when you have something, I guess, something to say versus rather than just doing
Sure.
it? Or...
Yeah, I have to have that,
Yeah.
I think. And again, even if it's a job that I'm just getting paid to do it, if I don't have any kind of connection to it, it's going to be a real slog to get through it, because it's a lot of work to make art and to draw stuff, and it's a lot of work to draw a comic. And if you don't feel any kind of connection to it other than the money, you will resent it. Or I will resent it. And so I try to be selective about the projects I say yes to, and it's not to say that good projects don't come along. Sometimes you got to say no to something for other reasons, and that's the utilitarian part of it, right? This is a great project, but I need this money right now to pay my rent, and so I got to take this other project that maybe isn't perfect, but there's like some connection for me in it.
Yeah.
And then that's the other reason I always try to put my stuff out consistently, and hopefully some of that catches on in a way that can turn into a more primary thing, and so that you get the best of both worlds.
Right.
And the other utilitarian part of it is when you're doing a project that has deadlines and stuff, you have to just accept that you're going to have some good days and some great pages, and you're going to have some days that the pages don't look so great, but most people won't notice, and it's all part of the journey of making this piece come together. There's going to be highs and lows in it. There's no movie with every shot perfect or anything, right?
Whoa. Okay. The Thing exists.
The Thing is close, though. The Thing is close.
That's good. But yeah, I'm fully on board with that. So I have to ask you about this. Okay. I have a few friends that were like, hey, you need to ask them. So the background, you got a lot of stuff going on, but you're always making those little mini fan comics. And you did Game Over Man, which was the Aliens fan comic of Bill Paxton's character, which rules. You did the Doom book, okay, and then you have your other mini comics too. That what you made while listening to sleep. Was that Ascender?
Yeah, well, the Weed Priest was kind of born out of my love of the album Dope Smoker by the band Sleep, and then I did sort of a sequel to that called Ascend, which is also sort of based in that sort of realm, but with a little bit. Both of them also have kind of shades of ancient aliens kind of things and things like that I just find to be endlessly entertaining. So I mean, I'm always, and the tradition started as I started doing the Inktober comics in October, where I would try to do, so most of these projects I did in the 30 days of October. Pretty much all the ones you named were done during the 30 days of October. The first Weed Priest wasn't, but the rest were all done. And I did a bunch of other ones that aren't even in print anymore. I did one that was little drawings of alien creatures. I did one about a guy on a journey to save his village. I've done one that's all horror characters. I did a month of X-Men characters. So sometimes they're not comics, but they might be just explorations of a thing that I like. But yeah, they're a lot of fun. I recommend anybody do them. 12 pages or 20 page, 12 pages is a great place to start for those kind of things.
For sure. Do you have an urge deep in your heart to do one in particular that you're feeling?
Well, there's a bunch. I have a whole document of just like short fan things I want to do. And last year I had to kind of pare it down. I was pretty busy, working on Eris stuff and this other project. And so all I did was I did a big drawing, which was another great exercise of just focusing on one drawing for a month instead of, because with the 12 pages in a month, you're doing basically half a page a day, and it's a mad dash, and you get some cool results with that immediacy. But I also like to work on projects where, kind of like I was talking about with Eris, where I can just dig in and just really just go for it. And so, I've got a few different ideas. I'm not sure if I'll do one in October or not. It really depends on my work situation. Because some of those, like when I did the Doom comic, that I was doing that basically I was drawing Beef Bros pages in the daytime and then working on that at night.
Wow.
And then the same thing with Aliens. I was working on the Schlub, and then I was doing the Aliens pages, at night.
Oh wow.
And it's a lot.
Yeah.
And it's kind of again, I'm trying to find healthy relationships with my stuff. So if I have a light October, I might do one for Inktober again, and it will be one of the ones for my list. There's a bunch of different things. I've been throwing around doing like a Baki grappler comic. I've been throwing around doing a Predator comic. I've been throwing around doing some other things like that, stuff from that kind of realm. I also have debated doing some more stuff that's based on music. So maybe be one of those things. I think that what'll happen is I'll see what my schedule's like in October, and which one of those things is speaking to me the most.
Yeah.
And kind of go from there. I'm glad people are excited about it though, because they are fun, and it's just a fun way to kind of challenge yourself to really just crank out some pages and be efficient and try different techniques you never tried before. And it's low stakes. So.
Yeah, for sure. And it's super fun to do. I mean, I saw you do your Doom book a while back, and I was like, dude, I'm gonna do one.
Yeah,
that's too cool.
Do it.
Yeah, so
do it, man.
I don't know if I sent it to you. It was the Legend of Carl. It was based off of Deep Rock Galactic, the video game. I was just playing that a lot with the homies. And I was like, all right, I'm going to put all of the Easter eggs in here. The people that play the game will know. No one else will know.
Exactly. I love that. And that's what I was trying to do too. In the Doom comic and the Aliens comic, there's a bunch of Easter eggs in there of like stuff from the movies and the games, but also just stuff that from people I know, and just things like that. It's fun to, again, there's nobody telling you no. And so you just can kind of just go for it.
Just have fun with it. Are you doing that with Eris too? I imagine you're probably putting like inside jokes and stuff in the backgrounds with you and your brother.
There's not as much Easter eggy jokes in that as much as I had in the Schlub and Beef Bros, which are chock full of them.
Oh yeah.
It's more that there's hopefully little details that people will get on multiple readings that are maybe not funny but interesting, right? like you'll see something in the background, or you'll notice a panel arrangement, and that panel arrangement probably took a little more energy than putting a goofball thing in the back, but it hopefully gives you a new way of looking at the story.
Yeah.
And so I always hope that people have an initial reading, which is somewhat enjoyable, right?
Yeah.
And then they can have 2 or 3 readings after that or more, where they can really consider not just the story as told through the words, but the way that pages reflect on one another, or the way certain motifs are mirrored from issue to issue. There's things that I did in issue 1, even though it's so long ago, that I'm sort of referencing in issue 3. Mm-hmm. And so my hope is that those are the kind of details people start to find, like, oh, I see, like when this shape is there, it's this, or when this panel arrangement is there, it's this. Those are the kind of things.
Yeah, dude, the panel arrangements that you do in Eris are insane too. Like I was describing earlier, the zipper, and then there's one where they're like flying up the page, or like flying up a tube, and they're just slicing and dicing dudes. It's nuts.
That's the stuff I find interesting. I mean, Eris is definitely one of the main things about it, other than just the story I wanted to tell, is it's an exploration of kind of formal aspects of things like action and page layout and things that I find infinitely interesting. Whenever I'm looking at any comic, I'm looking at that, like, how do these things relate to each other, and what's the best way to show something fast, or what's the best way to have an impact on something, or where is negative space most important? should there be panel borders? Should there not be panel borders?
Yeah.
And so I've thought about all those things on every page, and hopefully it is interesting.
Oh, it definitely is. Me and some friends have been talking about it, so it's super crazy. When you're planning out those pages, are you spending extra time thumbnailing out those wacky like panel ideas and stuff before the pencils?
I mean, that's a lot of times that's where the majority of the work is actually being done, is figuring out in the thumbnail stage, how is this going to work, right? In issue 2, there's a scene where a character, Rankin, is finally winning this fight against this other superpowered character. And I had this kind of vague thought of how I wanted these impact moments to be their own panels, but simultaneously have that overlay other panels and simultaneously have this sort of ghosting effect that I do with people punching and stuff, this blurry and ghosting effect. And I sort of had this vague idea of it. And then when I started working on it, that's when you realize, okay, like, how is this really going to work, right? And at the thumbnail phase, I'm already thinking about, okay, what are my colors going to be here vaguely? And like, where can I use color holds and, those kind of things. And so that by the time I get to the paper, I can just focus on the drawing and not wonder if, this panel arrangement works. And so I do a lot, like, that's another reason I like to get the thumbnails like really dialed in. And it's not that they're pretty detailed, I guess, but it's more just, you want to know that it flows, because no matter how good your drawing is, if you don't have something cool going on with the paneling and stuff, it's kind of, it falls kind of flat, And so I like my stuff to equally consider a character's rendering as much as I consider the panel shapes and borders and how to sell that chaos that I'm trying to, in a fight scene with the punching one I was talking about, I just wanted to feel like chaos, but at the same time have these little pauses where you can see the impacts. And then with the zipper one, that whole thing was about how can I show a character moving through space and time in an interesting way that isn't just panel, punch, right? How can I show it in a way where you get a sense that there's so much speed here that you can't see him, but you see the effects of this, and you see the transition from, him on one side to him on the other side, and there's also the transition of attack to defeat. Yeah. And so you get this sort of crisscross.
Yeah. When I saw that page, I was just like, whoa.
But that might be a little too, I don't know if that's too inside baseball, but.
No, I mean, we're getting into it, man. It's all good. It's all good. But I think we're going to get towards the end here. I know you got a lot to do, especially with the Kickstarter stuff and managing that. But got 2 more questions for you. So
yeah, man.
Wanted to know if there is a phrase or any advice that has stuck with you over the years from any particular person that has helped you on your art career path.
I think that I can't think of a specific phrase or saying as much as my time in art school. There was some instructors that had really big influence on me, and one of them was for practicality, right? And he said something to the effect of, "You're gonna make like 1,000 bad drawings before you make a good one."
Yeah.
And so just accept that and make the bad drawings, and don't let that stop you or get in the way, and just know that the energy put in is not always going to be directly equal, is rarely going to be directly equal to the effects coming out being exactly as you wish them.
Yeah.
And I had another instructor that really encouraged me to experiment more. Right. And Carl Worsom was the instructor, and just really pushed me to kind of not just think about comics within the frame of comics, but just think about them within the frame of visual art as a whole.
Yeah.
And that was really helpful. And so those are a couple things that have really stuck with me, is sort of the being brave and experimenting part of it, but also the, it's a process and it's a practice, and every day you don't hit home runs, but you got to hit a lot of balls.
Yeah, you do, for sure. I mean, there's definitely I feel like all of my college art will forever be locked in a vault.
I like seeing people's old art. I like to show old art too. It's good to look back and reflect, right? Yeah. Like, especially when you're starting a new project. That's another thing that I learned in school was like, I just pull out my old stuff and I look through it and I try to give it some praise.
Yeah.
And I also try to say, well, here's something that I have improved on or I want to improve on.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it definitely helps if you're struggling, like, to, put a line on the paper one day. It's to be like, what have I done? And then look back.
Yeah. Give yourself credit.
Yeah.
You might be surprised how good some of the old drawings are. Sometimes I am. I'm like, wow, how did I draw that? That was really cool.
Yeah, there's been a few situations where like, I don't have that patience anymore, man.
Right. Yeah, that's a big one.
I know there was one professor that was like, just because it's correct in terms of anatomy doesn't mean it's good. And I feel like that's akin to, like,
yeah.
I know Jack Kirby was just like, it doesn't have to be correct, it just has to feel right or look cool or whatever the phrase was.
Absolutely.
Which is definitely helps with creating comics. But we will close out with what are the best places to find your work? Is there a newsletter? Is there a website? People to find your art? And where can we see that Eris book at?
Yeah, so the only thing you need to do to find me is remember my name. It's pretty unique. Yep. My name's Tyrell Cannon. My website is tyrellcannon.com, and you can find all these things I'm going to mention on there. So the number one thing is if you get on my newsletter, that's a great way to find about new stuff coming out. That's the only way you're usually going to get on my commission list. And I usually offer special deals for people on my newsletter. Like they're all going to get something special with their Kickstarter rewards. I'm also on Instagram, TCannon Comics. I'm also on BlueSky, TCannon Comics. For some reason, I'm still on Twitter at TCannon Comics. And then I try at least once or twice a month to do a live stream on Tuesdays on YouTube. My YouTube channel, if you search for Tyrell Cannon, you find it, but it's YouTube /Uber Artist, I believe is what the name is on there. So all those places are great places to find me. The Kickstarter is running right now, April 7th through May 7th. And we've got some great things in there. I've got, the whole first two chapters and then a third chapter that's pretty much the same length as the first two chapters. So tons of new stuff. And then we're working on getting a source book together with some awesome artists like Manny and a bunch of other people. I just got Andrew Cronky, the guy who does Bloodrick, on board. I got some other great people on there. Malachi Ward. I've got tons of great people on there.
Awesome.
And so if we can make that one happen, that'd be great. And some other cool rewards on there. So I hope people will go check it out and see kind of a cool sci-fi passion project that we've put together.
Awesome. Sweet. And then we're going to run the trailer for your book on this video, awesome. And then that'll be it.